Have you ever stopped to think about what happens when a hospital is left behind? And when, instead of healing, all that's left are empty hallways, rusted instruments, and the echo of everything that went wrong inside. Hospitals are places where lives are saved every day. But they're also settings for silent goodbyes, extreme treatments, and sometimes stories that were never meant to happen. Now, imagine all of that abandoned, untouched, as if time had frozen in the middle of an emergency. Why were these hospitals shut down? What happened inside those walls that made them stay closed forever? And why do so many people say they feel something strange just by standing nearby? In this video, you're going with me on a journey through 10 abandoned hospitals that are far more than ruins. They are dark chapters of history, with pasts that still haunt those who dare to get too close. And stay until the end, because number 1 is the most disturbing of all. Stranded on a cursed island that feels like it came straight out of a nightmare. Hospital del Torax, de Terrassa, Spain. In the city of Terrassa, Spain, there's a hospital that was built with good intentions, but ended up gaining a far darker reputation. Hospital del Torax started as a specialized center for treating respiratory illnesses, but today it's remembered for a heavy past and disturbing stories that still echo through its halls. Inaugurated in 1952, the hospital was built to help control the rising number of tuberculosis cases in the country. Back then, lung diseases required long periods of isolation and painful treatments. For years, the hospital operated actively, but eventually started to receive fewer patients, and some who entered never made it out. With 9 floors and wide corridors, the building has a stern architectural style, made of concrete and large windows. It's surrounded by gardens and green spaces. But stepping inside feels anything but peaceful. Officially closed in 1997, the hospital has since been at the mercy of time and of the stories that never stopped. Today, access is restricted, though urban explorers and curious visitors have made their way in. Inside, surgical rooms still stand, rusty stretchers lie abandoned, medical records are scattered across the floors, and even the old chapel remains. The current state is one of partial abandonment. Some wings have been repurposed as film studios, but most of the building is untouched, with peeling paint, crumbling walls, broken windows, and a constant smell of mold and rust. Visitors have reportedly fainted on the lower floors, where ventilation is minimal, and the silence is broken only by the creaks of the old structure. The number of patients who ended their lives there was once so high, it raised alarms among staff, further contributing to the hospital's haunted reputation. People claim to hear voices, feel unseen presences, and see figures moving in the darker corridors. There's no concrete proof, but the number and consistency of these stories is hard to ignore. The hospital has been featured in documentaries and used as a horror movie set in Spain. Despite the fame, very few dare to stay there after dark. But not all abandoned hospitals stand alone. The next one is hidden deep within a European forest, where echoes of war still whisper through the trees. Beelitz-Heilstätten, Germany. Tucked away in the forests near Berlin, Germany, Beelitz-Heilstätten remains one of the largest and most intriguing abandoned hospital complexes in Europe. A place that started with the mission to heal and ended up swallowed by time and shadows. Built in 1898, it was originally a sanatorium for tuberculosis patients. Over the years, it became a military hospital and served thousands of soldiers during both World Wars. Records show that even Adolf Hitler was treated there after being injured in World War I. The complex is massive, over 60 buildings spread across a heavily wooded area. With red brick architecture and ornate designs, it almost looks like a fairy tale village from afar. But up close, it's anything but charming. Mold covers nearly every surface. The air reeks of rotting wood, surgical tools have been left to rust, and the long hallways carry a chilling echo that never seems to stop. The hospital began to empty out throughout the 20th century, and was officially decommissioned in the 1990s. Some areas have been reused, but most of the complex remains sealed off. While access is restricted, certain parts can still be reached through hidden paths, drawing urban explorers and history hunters. The maze of rooms and underground tunnels creates a constant feeling of disorientation. People report seeing figures on the upper floors, hearing footsteps that follow them, and feeling sudden drops in temperature in specific rooms. To this day, there are no explanations. Beelitz was even used as a filming location for the movie The Pianist, which only added to its eerie fame. But while this hospital sleeps deep in the forest, the next one is surrounded by water, and by memories that never quite made it to freedom. Ellis Island Hospital Complex, United States. Just off the coast of New York City, Ellis Island is well known as the primary gateway for immigrants entering the U.S. in the early 20th century. But on the far end of the island lies something far less talked about, a long-abandoned hospital filled with heavy history. Built between 1902 and 1930, the hospital complex was created to screen and treat sick immigrants upon arrival. Anyone showing signs of illness was immediately separated and kept in isolation for days or even months. The complex once had over 20 interconnected buildings. There were surgical suites, isolation wings, a morgue, and administrative areas. The architecture was purely functional, made of stone and concrete, with little concern for comfort. Today, the halls are empty, the paint is peeling, light filters weakly through broken windows, and silence presses down on everything. After World War II, the hospital was decommissioned and left to decay. Only recently have certain areas reopened for guided tours. Even so, the atmosphere remains incredibly heavy. Many report seeing shadows in the corridors and hearing whispers from empty rooms. The combination of human suffering and neglect has created a space that unsettles even the most skeptical visitors. In 2014, a group of photographers gained special access to document the hospital's interior, and what they captured was chilling: rusted beds, dusty equipment, and untouched patient files still sitting in drawers. It feels like the patients were rushed out, and the hospital was never entered again. But while this hospital witnessed the beginning of many lives in a new land, the next one saw the end of countless stories up in the misty mountains of a tropical country. Sanatorio Duran, Costa Rica. High in the mountains of Costa Rica, surrounded by fog and a nearly supernatural atmosphere, lie the ruins of Sanatorio Duran. Officially named Sanatorio Carlos Duran, it was inaugurated in 1918 as a hospital for treating tuberculosis. At the time, the cool air and clean environment in the Cartago region were considered ideal for patients with respiratory conditions, which is why the sanatorium was built there. But what was meant to be a place of healing slowly turned into something much darker. With several wings, dormitories, a chapel, isolation rooms, and administrative areas, the hospital grew into what resembled a small medical village. The buildings were simple, made of concrete and wood, with tall windows and long hallways. As medical treatments advanced and tuberculosis cases declined, the hospital was shut down in the 1960s. It briefly operated as a prison, then as an orphanage, but by the 1970s it was completely abandoned, and the legends began. Today, the structures are decaying, roofs are caving in, moss covers the walls, and the constant fog invades the empty rooms. Visitors are free to explore, and many do, drawn by the strange stories surrounding the place. Inside, cold hallways, scorched rooms, and eerie silence create a chilling experience, broken only by the sound of wind brushing through broken walls. The most well-known stories include ghostly children's voices, figures seen in windows, and apparitions in what used to be the women's ward. There's no official record confirming any of these phenomena, but the sheer number of people claiming to experience something strange has kept the place alive in local memory. Sanatorio Duran has been featured in documentaries and news segments, and is now one of the most visited haunted attractions in Central America. But while this hospital is open to the public and relatively easy to reach, the next one is locked down tight in one of the most controlled countries in the world, hiding deep scars from a military past. Old Changi Hospital, Singapore. On Singapore's eastern coast, in a region now filled with luxury apartments and modern buildings, stands an abandoned structure that looks completely out of place. Old Changi Hospital was opened in 1935 as part of the British military base, originally intended only for armed forces personnel. But during the Japanese occupation in World War II, the hospital's role took a much darker turn. It's believed that part of the hospital was used as an interrogation and detention center. Although not all official documents reveal what truly went on inside, eyewitness accounts and historical references point to episodes of extreme suffering. After the war, the site reopened as a civilian hospital and continued to operate until it was permanently closed in 1997. The building has 3 main floors connected by narrow staircases and long hallways, with rooms on either side. Constructed with concrete and brick, many of its windows are now broken or missing entirely. Singapore's humid climate has accelerated the decay. Mold creeps along the walls, leaks are everywhere, and vegetation has started overtaking the outer areas. Officially, entry is forbidden, but people still find their way inside through side entrances or ground-level openings. Once inside, the air feels heavy and damp, with a strong smell of moisture. There's echo even in small spaces, and very little natural light reaches the interior. What unsettles visitors most isn't the architecture, but the oppressive silence, broken by strange sudden noises coming from empty rooms. Stories of shadows moving across halls, muffled screams and unexplained voices are common. Locals even report sounds coming from the building late at night, and figures appearing in windows. Old Changi Hospital is considered one of the most haunted places in Asia. But the next stop takes us to a psychiatric hospital in Europe, where echoes of mental suffering are still etched into the walls. Ospedale Psichiatrico di Volterra, Italy. On a hillside in Tuscany, Italy, where the wind weaves through green fields and centuries-old stone buildings, stands the Ospedale Psichiatrico di Volterra. Once one of the largest psychiatric hospitals in Europe, it became infamous for questionable treatments and unforgettable stories. Though the hospital began operations in the 19th century, it was after 1888 that it expanded massively. The facility began to house thousands of patients, many of whom weren't even suffering from serious conditions but were kept there for decades. At its peak, the hospital held over 6,000 people at once. The complex consisted of dozens of pavilions, spread over an area of about 100,000 square meters. There were infirmaries, containment cells, walled-off outdoor areas, and long underground tunnels connecting the buildings. The stone and brick structures aged poorly. Today, the walls are cracked, some wings have collapsed, and vegetation has overtaken much of the site. Access is restricted, but not impossible. Inside, visitors find endless corridors, rusted iron doors, old beds, scattered medical files, and restraint chairs still bolted to the floors. The atmosphere is cold, even in the heat of summer. The air is dry and heavy, and the constant sounds of dripping, creaking, and shifting make every step feel tense. One of the most memorable stories is about a long-term patient who for years covered the walls with words and symbols, creating a kind of visual diary, parts of which can still be seen today. Reports of disembodied voices, screams, and figures are common among those who explore the ruins. Today, the hospital is a powerful symbol of an era when mental illness was handled with cruelty and ignorance. It's been a subject of books, exhibitions, and research into the dark history of psychiatric treatment. And if you've already felt a chill during this journey, now's the time to brace yourself, because the next places are even more intense. If you're enjoying the video so far, leave a like, subscribe for more content like this, and ring the bell so you don't miss what's still to come. The next hospital shows how a facility meant for children ended up leaving scars that time couldn't erase. Pennhurst State School and Hospital, United States. In the state of Pennsylvania, United States, there's a hospital that wasn't built to treat physical illness, but to house and educate children with disabilities. Founded in 1908, the Pennhurst State School and Hospital began with the promise of care and specialized education for people with special needs. But over time, the facility became a symbol of institutional failure. Overcrowding, lack of staff, and chronic neglect turned Pennhurst into one of the darkest examples of what happens when systems collapse. By the 1960s, the hospital was housing more than 2,000 patients, many living in inhumane conditions. Reports of mistreatment began to surface in the following decades, and after a series of investigations and lawsuits, Pennhurst was finally shut down in 1987. The site is enormous, with dozens of buildings, underground tunnels, and interconnected wings. Today, the structures are overtaken by rust, mold, and crumbling walls. Abandoned wheelchairs, medical files, and even children's toys can still be found scattered throughout the property. The atmosphere is one of complete abandonment. The only sounds are the wind coming through broken windows and the occasional creak of old wood. The smell of mold is strong, and natural light barely reaches the inner hallways. Many visitors report a heavy, emotional weight in the air, as if something is still lingering from the past. There are countless claims from tourists, explorers, and even film crews who say they've heard voices, felt sudden chills, or seen shadowy figures. The site has since been opened for limited public tours and is considered one of the most paranormally active locations in the U.S. What's most disturbing isn't just the ghost stories. It's how a place meant to protect the most vulnerable became a symbol of cruelty and abandonment. And if that's already hard to process, the next hospital reveals an even darker side of what was once considered treatment in the 19th century. Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum, United States. In the heart of West Virginia stands a massive, castle-like building with a haunting history. The Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum opened in 1864 and, for over a century, was the site of some of the most controversial psychiatric treatments in American history. Originally designed to hold about 250 patients, the hospital eventually housed more than 2,400 at its peak. Overcrowding became extreme, and the conditions quickly declined. Treatment methods included prolonged isolation, electroshock therapy, and even lobotomies, all of which were considered acceptable at the time, but are now recognized as deeply harmful. The asylum's Gothic architecture is striking. Tall windows, stone walls, endless corridors, and massive iron doors. Inside, time seems frozen. Mold spreads across ceilings, floors creak with every step, and the air is heavy with dust and decay. The building is considered one of the most haunted in the United States. Visitors and staff alike report hearing screams, whispers, footsteps, and even seeing objects move on their own. Nighttime ghost tours are popular, and not for the faint of heart. There are verified accounts of patients who spent more than 30 years there, often in total isolation. Perhaps that's why the energy feels so dense, as if the sorrow and suffering never really left. But as terrifying as this place is, the next one takes everything: the isolation, the pain, and the overwhelming atmosphere, and amplifies it to an unimaginable level. Waverly Hills Sanatorium, United States. Atop a hill in Louisville, Kentucky, stands Waverly Hills Sanatorium, a hospital once filled with tuberculosis patients and now shrouded in fear, legend, and history. Opened in 1910, it was built at a time when tuberculosis had no known cure, and isolation was the only treatment. At any given time, Waverly Hills held around 400 patients, and over the years, thousands were treated there. Sadly, many didn't survive. One of the most infamous features of the building is the so-called body chute, a 500-foot tunnel used to discreetly remove deceased patients so others wouldn't lose hope. Ironically, that tunnel became a key part of the hospital's terrifying legacy. The building itself is massive, 5 stories tall, made of brick and concrete, with long corridors and treatment rooms still containing original equipment. Though parts of the hospital have been restored, much of it remains in ruin. The interior is cold, damp, and eerily quiet. Natural light is scarce, and moisture clings to the walls. Apparitions are reported regularly. Visitors describe shadowy figures in the halls, phantom voices, doors that slam on their own, and footsteps echoing in empty spaces. Waverly Hills now operates as a paranormal attraction and a memorial to those who suffered during the TB crisis. But if you thought this was the peak of fear, wait until you hear about number 1. A place so isolated, so deeply haunted by its past, that even locals refuse to set foot on its soil. Poveglia Island, Italy. Between Venice and Lido, Italy, lies a small island shrouded in mist and surrounded by eerily calm waters. Its name is Poveglia, and for more than a century, it has been considered one of the most haunted places in all of Europe. In the 18th century, the island was used as a quarantine station for plague victims. Thousands of people were sent there, and many never left. It became the site of a psychiatric hospital. Little is officially known about what went on inside that hospital. Former staff and nearby residents have spoken of unethical practices, isolation, and a thick, oppressive atmosphere. The hospital closed for good in 1968, and since then, Poveglia has been completely abandoned. The remains still stand, crumbling structures, a bell tower that once belonged to a church, and overgrown courtyards. Some documents even suggest that much of the soil is mixed with human ash, the result of mass cremations during the plague. Access to the island is forbidden by Italian authorities, but some still try to reach it by boat. Those who have set foot on Poveglia describe a silence that screams, a constant cold wind, and a powerful sense of not being alone. Stories of shadows, whispers, and unexplained noises are common. Poveglia has inspired books, documentaries, and paranormal investigations. It's not just what happened there that haunts people, it's what was left behind. Every stone seems to carry a memory, and none of them are light. These hospitals aren't just old, abandoned buildings. They are permanent marks of what once happened in different eras, cultures, and corners of the world. Places where human suffering was locked away, where abandonment wasn't just physical, but emotional, and where every empty hallway still echoes with stories people are too afraid to remember. So what about you? Would you dare visit any of these places? Which one left you the most unsettled? And which abandoned hospital do you think should be featured in a part 2 of this video? If you've made it this far, it means this story held your attention. So leave a like, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss what's coming next, and turn on notifications, because there's more true, mysterious, and chilling content on the way.